All right, Jake, are we live? I don't see the flashing red light.
You should be here. There you go.
Okay. Centerville City Council is now in session. It's a little ironic we have to wait for the internet before we're allowed to start our council meetings these days, but we appreciate you all joining us this evening. We've just finished a joint work session with the Planning Commission. We appreciate their time and their service. So we've been discussing the Pages Lane corridor and potential revitalization of that. We'll note for the record that all members of the City Council are in attendance, and we'll start tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance, as we always do, and then Councilman Bill Ince will provide us with a prayer or a thought. So if all you handsome men in uniform would join us and help us with the Pledge of Allegiance, we'd appreciate it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I prefer having a thought as opposed to just a thought and a prayer as opposed to just a prayer. Unfortunately, I'm not real happy with the thought that I came up with tonight, but I'm going to share it anyway. According to Mark Twain, the two most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why. And so I hope we have all found out why. With that, I'd like to say a prayer. Our Father which art in heaven, we bow our heads before thee at the beginning of this city council meeting and give thee thanks for the many blessings that surround us. We are thankful for this country. We are thankful for this state and for this city. We're thankful for the beautiful weather and for a winter of plentiful water, and pray that we may make the most of the things that surround us, that we may be good neighbors. We pray that during this meeting we will be cognizant of the others, that we will bear goodwill to all and be considerate of the problems, and we say this in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Councilman Ince. We're delighted to have so many of our officers here tonight, and they always look good, but especially when you wear your dress blues, you guys really look sharp. So we'll take a minute to turn some time over to the Chief of Police to recognize our new officer, Officer McWilliams. And Steve, we probably did you take the opportunity last time to recognize the chief, or can we take a minute to do that?
We should do that.
The chief was recognized by the Fraternal Order of Police as the Police Chief of the Year in the state of Utah, is my understanding. And we certainly believe that and support that. He does a fantastic job, and the council, I think I speak for them to saying we support you, your mission, and your great officers.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Steve. Thank you very much. Well, it's my pleasure and honor to be here
Give
today.
him a round of applause, please.
Sure, that's
Thank you. Well, I wasn't expecting that. Thank you. Again, it's my pleasure and honor to be here.
He looks really cute in pink, though.
Now, I thought that was our little secret. Well, I'd like to introduce to the council, Mayor and the council, a new officer that we have just recently hired, and also to talk about some changes that we've had in the police department. So I'd like to invite Sean McWilliams up here with me. So Sean was hired by us just recently. He came to us from the Utah Highway Patrol. He was hired to fill a vacancy that was opened by Officer Snow retiring. Sean is a very experienced officer, having worked with Utah Highway Patrol for 10 years, and prior to that as a Kansas State Trooper. During his tenure with Utah Highway Patrol, Sean received many letters of commendations for going above and beyond regular duties, and he received a lot of letters of commendation, like many. He has numerous certifications and training hours and is working towards a bachelor's degree. He is a very well-liked officer and is highly recommended by his administration during the hiring process as both a leader and a motivator. Sean is married to Bonnie here, and he has 2 kids, the 2 boys here, Gavin and Grady. Yeah. So, and Bonnie is expecting here pretty soon. So we're very happy to have Sean with our department working for us. I can tell you that he is an excellent man and an excellent person, an excellent hire. In fact, when I was out at the last session of the legislature, Colonel Rapich from the Utah Highway Patrol came up to me, and he saw me as I was roaming around there, walking up to one of the committee meetings, and he gave me an enthusiastic, greeting and actually a little bit of a embrace, and then he stopped and went, "You're taking one of my guys." I says, "Yeah, I am, Sean McWilliams," and he goes, "Oh, that hurts." And he said, "He's a great guy," and I can certainly vouch for that. So at this time, I'd like to go ahead and do a swearing-in ceremony for Sean, and would invite Marcia to go ahead and take care of that swearing-in.
Sure.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, and state your name,
I, Sean McWilliams,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office
and I will discharge the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
So we'd like to have Bonnie take a moment here and go ahead and pin the badge on her husband. Congratulations. Welcome aboard. So, in addition to the new hire, we've also had some other changes, mostly because of the new sergeant position that was approved by the council a few months ago. And after rigorous testing, the new sergeant was chosen, and that is Detective Will Barnes. So Will, if you wouldn't mind coming up here. Will started with Centerville Police Department in 2006 as a patrol officer. He became a detective in 2015, and in March, well, today, after extensive testing and interviewing, he will be promoted to sergeant and assigned to patrol. Will is a professional and excels at all he does. Will worked very hard in 2016 to become the department's first SWAT officer. He also is the department's firearm instructor. Will is very respected by his coworkers and peers. Will has received numerous Officer of the Quarter plaques and was nominated by the members of this department as Officer of the Year in 2011. Will has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and is married to Connie, his wife Connie, who's very active with the State Fraternal Order of Police Auxiliary. They have 4 children, and it's a family of law enforcement, and we certainly appreciate, Connie, your involvement with Will and all that he does. So, Connie, if you wouldn't mind coming forward, and we'll give you the opportunity to pin your husband with a sergeant's badge. I might note that the position of sergeant is an extremely critical position, and it's probably one of the most critical positions we have out in the field.
All right, how about a hand for Will?
So let me just take a few more minutes here, if you don't mind, and let you know about some of the other changes that have happened. As you know, Jeremy Brown has been our DARE officer. Thanks, Will. Appreciate you.
The best in Utah, right?
What's that?
The best in Utah.
Yeah, so let me read a little something about Jeremy here. With Will being a detective, now going into patrol, has opened up a detective slot, and so Jeremy Brown was chosen for that position. Jeremy started working for Centerville Police Department in July of 2011. He had previously worked for West Bountiful Police for 3 years. Jeremy started in the patrol division and became the DARE SRO officer in May of 2014. He has made the program very successful, as we all can attest to. And he was nominated and awarded DARE Officer of the Year and SRO Officer of the Year. This is the first for anyone to receive both awards in 1 year. He recently became a detective when Will Barnes became sergeant. Jeremy wears many hats. He's a tremendous assist to administration in statistics and other things. He's a phlebotomist and a drug recognition expert. He is always very supportive and willing to help anyone with special projects. In addition to working for the department, Jeremy is going to night school to finish his bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and he is married and has 1 child. So he's not here tonight. He's actually out at school tonight. He wasn't able to make it. And if I could invite David Davis up for just a moment. So David was selected as the new DARE officer. This is a very, very important position as well. It's a very public position, dealing with lots of kids, and David Davis was enthusiastic to put in for that position. David Davis started working for Centerville Police Department in February of 2015. He previously had 7 years of correctional officer experience working in New Hampshire and with the Davis County Sheriff's Office. David served his country while in the Air Force for 6 years. He was deployed to both Iraq and Afghanistan. With all the promotions and movement in the department, David Davis will become the department's next DARE SRO officer. He is also a drug recognition expert and is currently working towards his criminal justice degree as well. And he is married to Christy, and they have 1 son. I might note that David, while on deployment, had a mortar round go off pretty close to him and was hit by a little bit of shrapnel and had a near encounter with death there. So he's definitely got some life experience. So we're happy to have him as our DARE officer. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are some exciting changes. We're excited about it, and we appreciate the energy and the visibility that our officers have in our community, whether it's with our schools or out on the streets. We genuinely appreciate that.
Thank you.
Could I note, Mayor, that today our Parks Director planted some blue and white pansies at City Hall in honor of the police.
So hopefully by May and Law Enforcement Appreciation Week, they will be.
And he hopes that as they grow, you'll be able to recognize CPD with the white ones.
We look forward to that. Thank you very much. We know you all want to stay for the rest of our meeting, but we'll understand if you decide to. If you have other plans this evening.
The only uniforms you're going to be left with are scouts.
We'll have the scouts move to the front row, and so we can still see some uniforms. The next on our agenda is an open session, an opportunity for any member of our community to speak to us about any matter of municipal concern. I'm not aware ahead of time anyone who wanted to speak, but we'll go ahead and open the open session and invite anyone who would like to come to the microphone and state their name and city of residence and share with us any comments that they have.
Tracy James, address is 598 East, 100 South. Been here before with regards to the retention pond. son wants me to save it, et cetera, et cetera. Squeaky wheel gets the grease. Nothing's happened around there with the fence coming down. I understand you're working behind the scenes and intensely with the county, so just want to let it be known again publicly that I'd be willing to buy a piece of that ground if it ever comes back to the city, and we hope to do that. And that was nice to see these officers. And I'm just as a sidebar, my son knows Officer Brown very well, so he's told me about his promotions, et cetera. So it is working within the city that they're getting to those kids and making a great relationship. So hopefully this officer too. Anyway, my wishes are, if it ever comes back to the city, that piece of land that I would like to have an opportunity to put a bid on for some of that land if it comes back, the retention bond comes back to the city. So there you go.
Thank you. And I would affirm that we're working with the county. I'm not sure their time frame for making it public, but they were going to put it on one of their next agendas, is my understanding. Do you have any?
I don't have an update yet.
I don't have an update on when that is, but thank you for that reminder. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Seeing none, I'll close the open session, and we'll move to the other items on our agenda. The first of which is some minutes review and acceptance. I would suggest that we take the January 31st work session minutes, that we table that, and if we have time at the end of our meeting to go through that, we can do that again, but let's not take time there. Are there any changes to the March 1st or work session or the March 7th regular meeting minutes that are suggested?
I have a change on the work session, page 2, line 47, at the end of that paragraph,
Which work session?
March 1st. So this is after Councilman Ince asked those in attendance how they feel about if the city has a responsibility to provide burial space to citizens. And it states there was very little response. I'd like on the record that Councilwoman Fillmore asked how many already had purchased a space, and almost all raised their hands. That's a good, yeah.
I had a question that maybe Katie can remember. On that same page, line 29 and 31, it references Mayor Hershey in discussions with the Roberts. I was under the impression it was Mayor Deemer.
No.
But I know Mayor Deemer also talked with the Roberts about that.
I cannot remember that. He may have, but I went personally with Mayor Hershey to visit the Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did also have something in the May 7th, if no one had anything else on the May 1st. This is line...
Which page?
Page 5. At the end of line 24, that's an end of a sentence. The sentence being, she said she would feel more comfortable approving language thoroughly thought out by the Planning Commission, and she also stated she feels uncomfortable with the inconsistency of the Centerville Elementary neighborhood not being included in the single-family home only statement or language.
Do we have any concerns with that language? Are there any other changes suggested or additions? If not, I'd look for a motion to approve the March 1st work session and March 7th, 2017 regular meeting and closed meeting minutes.
There is one more set.
He mentioned about putting that
Yeah,
at the end of the
we
meeting.
would table that till the end of the meeting.
Including the March 7?
That's where I just made a change.
Oh.
Is
We
that
did
the
the
council meeting minute?
No, the closed meeting.
The closed
March
meeting?
7.
Oh.
Are there,
I don't think there were any,
I don't think there were
any
any
changes to that.
changes to that.
Okay. Is that included in your motion?
well, I haven't made, I'm
Okay.
looking for a motion. If there's someone who
Mayor,
would
I
make
move
one.
that we accept the May 3rd, and the March 1st work session, the March 7th regular meeting, and the March 7th closed meeting minutes as amended.
Second.
Moved and second. Any further discussion?
I'm a little confused. Did you say oh, okay, yeah, I got you. Then it was the January
Yeah,
31.
January we're holding off
That was
on.
tabled, okay.
All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Do we need a formal motion to table the January 31st? Or
So
can we
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That sounds unanimous. Next item on our agenda is a public hearing on the PDO and conceptual site plan amendment for the Legacy Trail Apartments. We'll first hear a staff report from Corey Snyder, our Community Development Director, and then if the applicant would like to speak after that, we'll give him the opportunity.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Jake, if we just look at the first picture that has the white fence, and we'll bring that up. Just by way of procedure, the Legacy Trail Apartments is a planned development of the city. It has, if you will, its own custom design expectations. A lot of the design expectations follow the regular city ordinances. In the case of fencing, that's one of them. If the use of fencing is looked at by the Parish Lane Design Guidelines, and this use of fencing was approved as part of their conceptual plan. By base, the fence design were two types. The first one was a 3-rail fence design to be used in strategic areas, particularly along frontage of Parish Lane. The other type of fence was a solid PVC or vinyl fence that would be located along the trail system on the western side.
Is this the one you want? These
That's
pictures?
the other one with the white rail.
Is
We'll
it
go
the
to that
same-
one.
Same sequence?
There you go. Perfect. They'd like to change that. So a little bit of discussion about the Parish Lane fencing where you have the 3-rail design. You currently see the design of a 2-rail, so it doesn't quite comply with the original design. And as they evaluated that and they're there, the fencing, they want to change this area. So what they'd like to do is to take that white fencing that you see installed here on the picture and at the site and eliminate that, because part of the Parish Lane Design Guidelines requires the use of pillars as intermittently, it doesn't say how many feet, for visual relief and design. They would like to eliminate this. They didn't install the pillars with this one particularly. They'd like to eliminate this fence, replace it with the pillars. So they have a new pillar design system to frame the fence, and then they would space out with wrought iron in between the fencing. And that wrought iron and pillar design would meet the base of the ordinance. So we think that's in compliance with the expectations of the original plan, just now a material change. The other white fence, there in that park strip was another white fence that did not show up in the original design plan. The original design plan was leaving this park strip in place, and UDOT required a fence, and we entered an agreement with UDOT when they put this median in. This fence along the park strip was to encourage people to use 1250 West to cross over the street and then get onto the trail system. What UDOT was concerned about at the time was somebody with a bike could come down further than 1250 West, and then when there was a break in traffic, could jump over to the trail. You know, in all actuality, most people I see do not jump over to the trail. They just go straight down through the ramps and jump over the guardrail. That's the easier route to take than to dart through traffic. They do have a right-of-way protection fence that wraps this corner. We do have the median in place. And so the incentive to try to jump through the traffic is on a lower end from our standpoint. We talked with our Public Works Director. He's concerned about the fence in the park strip with the snow plows from the state damaging that fence. The developer's concerned because we have the light poles and the utilities that are all smashed into that park strip. And so he'd like to eliminate that fence. So now you would have no fence in the park strip, a wrought iron and pillar fence on the inside of the trail or to the south, but we're in agreement with UDOT for that fence restriction. So city staff and the Planning Commission look at it, do not see the need for that fence because it really was a UDOT parameter. So if UDOT would allow that elimination, we would be supportive of that elimination. So that's what they would like to proceed, is get with UDOT. I know that they have talked with UDOT, so the applicant can bring you up to speed on where they're at with UDOT. But if UDOT doesn't get rid of it, then it stays in, and it'll be the white rail fence, because that's what UDOT required. So that'll be an interesting discussion. So the question is the city okay with that elimination, and then let UDOT defer what they want to do? Now, Jake, the other picture, if you will. You see the start of a chain link right on the corner there, and this is the fencing along the trail system. Yes, it's been installed. I did not use Photoshop for it. This is their actual fence. They'd like to change to this style, and they can explain some of the reasons. It's basically looking at what was done over the overpass, and they would like to change it to this style. It does have every 40 feet a 5x5 post, which they were trying to give some decorative element to it. From my standpoint, this is not a mandatory fence. This was a design fence of the original project. Actually, when they came back several months ago and said, we'd like to think of a design change, I said, I think a good design change would be appropriate, because the white vinyl fence and the winds, they're going to be blown out in those panels if you put that in. The other thing that I was in agreement with is graffiti. If you have a solid fence, the users of the trail. Now, in my planning utopia, there would be no fence, and just let it be open, because I like the openness feel of it. The chain link fence at least gives you some visual appeal, connection to the development. They do have some lights. You see the decorative lights down the trail, so that would be nice that those are installed there. So the question is would you allow them to change their option from the solid PVC vinyl to this style of fence? The Planning Commission also evaluated it, and ultimately they agreed with these basic changes. There was a little bit of hesitancy because chain link isn't always necessarily everybody's favorite, but it is a vinyl coated system. Now, the interesting element of this fence is it does not occur all the way down the property line, because this area you're away from the pipes, but as that trail angles, it becomes a place where you're over those high pressure pipelines. And they do not plan from now to finish that fence till the final design on those pipes, and getting permission to either turn on a 90 and run down the detention basin on that far corner, or some element of that nature. So they don't plan on finishing it as of yet until they get permission from the easement holder. But they would like to install that fence in its entirety at some point in time. And they can explain to you, the reasonings of some of their elements if you have any questions on that. The last item is when you run down the trail, walk, bike, I run occasionally, there's a power box in the right-of-way of UDOT, and the trail needed to shift, and the trail slightly went on to private property. And the agreement is with the city, the developer, and UDOT that trail would be located entirely on UDOT right-of-way. So there's a sliver area that needs to be transferred to UDOT, and we evaluated that too as part of the amendment. So if you're amenable, the Planning Commission is giving you a recommendation of a positive with these changes, and they'd like to seek your sanction of it.
Thank you. I had one question. I'm not sure if others have a question about the height of the wrought iron fence compared to the rail fence that's there now.
The pillars would be at 5 feet, I believe the set on the plans are. It'd be
And
4 to 5 feet.
The fence would also be higher, and that was higher than the original
The
requirement, or?
No, this was always the 3 rail, 4 foot, with the pillars going up to the 5 foot. They're just replacing it with the wrought iron style.
Any other questions for Corey before we hear from the applicant? Mr. Hale, you're welcome to say something if you'd like, not required.
I'm Fred Hale. I live in Centerville, 63 West, 1750 North. We kind of messed up. I didn't think it was a big deal. I'm learning. We went ahead and changed the fence thinking it was a It was better. And we got our hands slapped by the staff. And we are now here to, that white fence is now gone. In fact, we removed it last night in preparation to put up our brick columns and then a wrought iron fence. It's called wrought iron fence, but it's really just a steel fence. It's powder coated, and just so that in the future, if you go down there and you see it's not wrought iron, it's going to be a fence that will match what our balcony railings are like. I've got I think I don't know if Lisa and them received this, but that's kind of, should I pass this?
Sure, yeah.
That's what it's gonna look like, and so it matches what's on the building, and the brick color is the same brick that's on the buildings as well. Also with the chain link, as was mentioned, you know, we tried to pattern that after what was installed going up over the overpass. 5x5 posts are every 40 feet. Also, if you go down there and you look, all the with the winds and that, it kind of keeps it in our development, you know, so we go around and pick it up, which really works well. And it should withhold your 110-mile-an-hour winds that we have here. So you know, it's also for protection. So we wanted that to go all the way down, but with the trail kind of coming back over on top of the high-pressure gas lines, we had to stop it where it's at, wait to see what they may. I think that's not going to happen, but they may abandon that easement and go up Parish, which I'm hoping, because if they don't, they're going to come right through our parking lot, tear it up, and replace that line. So they do have the technology to bore, but I don't think they will. I talked to them today. So hopefully they'll go up Parish in 1250 and stay away, but I doubt it. Also to note that that piece of property that we had to quit claim deed to UDOT, that was done today. And so that's moving forward. Hopefully you saw that and okayed that. Dang. But anyway, that was done today. So in order to fit that trail in, we had to give a lot of property to UDOT. And then we had to buy a piece of property from them on the corner. And I asked, that's not fair. We're going to give you more than what I need to buy. And he says, we receive, we don't give.
Isn't that the truth?
If anybody's dealt with UDOT, you know, just stay away. Don't develop on a UDOT piece of property. So I won't.
We're excited about the trail, though.
It really turned out nice.
Yeah, the trail will be a great amenity, and I assume it's attracting people to your development.
Yeah,
And
they love it.
it seems like it's filling up quickly.
Yeah.
I also like the chain link because I think it makes the trail a little safer because you can be seen. I don't like the parts of the trail where nobody can see me. I have to go faster.
See, one thing that was not on the site plan, I don't think we had lights on that trail. We put the lights in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice
Corey?
touch.
Am I right? Okay.
Very
So
good.
anyway,
You're up for Citizen of the Year. Any progress on your commercial pads? I know it's irrelevant to this. Lisa will give me the evil eye, but since you're here?
not one call. Not one call. We had a hotel looking at it, and we couldn't get them to fit, so they went away. I don't know, they may come back, but yeah, I guess we've had some doctors come down there and look, but nothing. So, but those lots will be cleaned up here as soon as the weather kind of sticks in here and we can get it cleaned up and graded out. It's going to look better than what it is. So we are, just to give you an update, we're probably 3 months away from total completion, C of O and landscape, so about 2.5, 3 months. It's been a long process, but it's been fun.
Right, we appreciate the improvements that will make it look
Thanks.
great and last a long time.
Looks good. Any other questions? Okay, okay, one other thing on the fence in the park strip. We are, they are reviewing that, UDOT is, to see what they want to do with that. I would suggest that we don't put up a vinyl. If we put up anything at all, it'd be this same fence look that you're looking at. So it just wouldn't look good. I've got pictures here of all the snow that was pushed up into that. I don't think any fence would hold up with that, but.
Yeah, I think staff is fully supportive of leaving that one out of the park strip.
They are.
Fred.
Yes, they are. So,
And at least we feel comfortable that the language in the ordinance is flexible depending on what UDOT does with regard to
Yes,
that.
we entered into an agreement with UDOT that specifies the fencing type and the fencing location, and so that agreement has to be amended. But I would like to suggest one additional condition, that the developer shall submit new exhibits for all new fencing designs. They've submitted the exhibit for the fencing location. They've submitted one exhibit tonight for the low fencing, but they'll also need to submit the specific design for the chain link. So we can add that to our exhibit, and we can also add it as a final approved design. But
and that is coming.
okay. So that would be a condition F in the ordinance on those conditions.
Thank you. This matter is scheduled for a public hearing, so I will go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this issue, to amend the PDO and the overlay and conceptual site plan for the Legacy Trail Apartments? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and turn it to the council for action.
I'm going to move that we adopt ordinance 2017-01 Legacy Trail PDO amendments with the suggested amendments from Lisa.
I'll second that.
2017-07.
07?
Did I say 2017-07?
Yep.
Yeah.
Second.
So to move and seconded that we adopt ordinance 2017-07, which is an amendment to the plan development overlay and conceptual site plan for Legacy Trail Apartments with the additional finding F.
F, that the developer shall submit new exhibits for the fencing, for all new fencing designs.
Any further discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. We'll look forward to an attractive new fence and appreciate those improvements.
I did.
Yeah, make it.
Next up, we have another PDO zone map amendment on the Parish Creek Business Park. Looks like we'll have a staff report from Cassie on that one.
Do you want to bring up the site plan first?
Conceptual site plan?
Conceptual.
Yeah, that looks good. Okay. Good
There's
evening,
a- There's a
everyone.
pointer right there, Cassie. This,
It's
the stick.
All right, so the Paris Creek Business Park is a 16-acre site between Legacy Highway and I-15, so it provides good visibility on both sides of the highways, but has limited accessibility, which is only through 950 West at the bottom here. So this would actually be facing north, this top end. So it's currently zoned industrial high and was previously approved as a PDO back in 2011, but has since expired and come under new ownership under Tom Stewart Construction. The project consists of 6 buildings, which will later be subdivided into 5 lots, and all of them will be used for office and warehousing. And as you guys already know, a plan development overlay are approved in exchange for design flexibility, integration of uses, open space, and optimum land planning. And a requirement of the PDO is that the planning and design of the property as a whole would be a better development than possible under conventional zoning regulations. So since this is an industrial zone, it has all the same underlying development standards as an industrial zone, but this project is designed as a campus-style business park, so all 6 buildings will be built with consistent architectural themes, same coloration and earth tones, and which I'll show you pictures of in a minute, and has a campus feel throughout the park, so lots of open space, view corridors, and pedestrian paths. And also under conventional zoning, an industrial site would only be required to do 10% landscaping. But this is a very large site, and a lot of it is close to the wetlands, and they've actually maintained a lot of the wetlands on their site. If you want to go to the wetland map that's provided. So they're actually keeping over 3 acres of the property as wetlands, and then an additional 2 are infill, but will be maintained as landscaping, more traditional upland landscaping design. And so between the 2 and the 3 acres that they're, over 3 acres that they're keeping, and then infilling an additional 2 as landscaping, it's over 40% of the site is being landscaped. So we think that's definitely an improvement from the normal industrial zone. So we believe that between the architectural themes and the campus style and the improved landscaping, we believe that this meets the requirements of the PDO to upgrade the conventional zoning standards. And in exchange for these upgrades in design, we allow variances to some code standards for the PDO. And in this case, they do have one building that's 57,000 square feet, when normally the limit for an industrial zone would be 50,000 square feet. So we would recommend to allow that variance. And also because of the depth of the property, if you could go back to the site plan. A normal, in the municipal code, the normal maximum length of a cul-de-sac would be 400 feet. But because this property is so very long, that cul-de-sac right now is at 550. And that's just, it's almost necessary for this shape of a property to access those northern buildings. And actually the back ones will still need access through the parking lot. But because of the extra length of the cul-de-sac, there is a compromise with the fire department and the city engineer to widen the cul-de-sac quite a bit. So if in any kind of emergency situation, there could still be 2 lanes of traffic on either side. So it's quite a wide street. And it will be have a landscape median in the middle, giving kind of like a wide boulevard feel to it, which would be nice. And Tom Stewart Construction did submit some photos from their previous projects, and they did include a rendering, which we should look at. Yeah. So these are some of the renderings and the materials that they would use. That is actually, that wood rail screen is actually just stamped concrete, so it has a look of a wood paneling, and in some cases a corrugated metal, but it's all just stamped concrete. And then they have those large tinted windows. And can you scroll down? Yeah. So originally the Planning Commission was a little concerned because of these back warehouses facing Legacy Highway, since there's so much visibility along that highway. So we asked them to add a little bit more detail to those back warehouses, which they did, adding in the paneling and the concrete texture. So there were some improvements on the detail to those back warehouses. And then in the other photos that they submitted, there's just more examples of their previous projects, so you can see the quality of their work. Because the main concerns with the Planning Commission was the visual aesthetics and the overall design of the architecture. So they did provide a few examples.
Do you want the examples?
Yeah. I think it's labeled 1 through 5 and then 6 through 13. So these are examples of some of the xeriscaping, and because there's so much xeriscaping on the proposed property, I think they said the western side, more towards the wetland, would be more, wetland style, and then in the medians and around the entrances would be more traditional landscaping of flowers and trees, and incorporating some xeriscaping into the project as well. So these are all just photos of previous projects that could be similar. This is the concrete slab in the middle that mimics corrugated metal.
you want the other examples as well, Cassie?
Sure, yeah. The other ones I think are of apartment complexes, but it shows you the materiality of their other projects and just the quality of the aesthetic design. Yeah. And the representative from Tom Stewart can explain a little bit more if you guys feel the need about the design of the architecture, or what materials to be used. But we think because of the campus style feel to it and the wetlands and the landscaping, we thought it was suitable for the PDO, and the Planning Commission did unanimously vote to recommend it.
Cassie, can you speak to the differences between what was approved previously and this design? It seems like there's some
Yeah, there were
improvements to this
a
design.
lot of similarities, and I wasn't around back in 2011, so from what I read of the previous staff report, it was very similar, with less architectural detail submitted, and it was much more conceptual because they never got to the final site plan. So,
Any other questions for staff before we invite the applicant if they would like to address us? And if the applicant is here, we'd be happy to hear from you if anything you'd like to say.
Yeah, Mayor, members of the council, thanks for your time in considering this. My name is Ken Stewart. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Tom Stewart Construction. And actually, the Director of Project Development for the development company that owns it. It's actually owned by an entity by the name of Remini Properties, which is slightly different than Tom Stewart Construction, but we'll be the general contractor on that. Some of those embellishments that we were looking at, some of the photos maybe didn't get in there that we thought would be there. Particular note was the apartment complex that we did. That looks like a regular apartment complex. That was done entirely out of concrete. And so the paneling that looked like wood, the close-up picture.
This one here?
Yeah, that right there is actually.
It's concrete?
Concrete.
Really?
All of that. So the entire, what looks like wood paneling there is actually just a form liner that you pour concrete in and then paint it.
Stamped and stood up, or?
Well, it's not
Yeah,
stamped.
formed.
It's actually a form liner that you pour it in there, and it's tilted up that way.
So you're saying that's surface painted, or that's actually the colored dye for the
You
concrete?
could do it that way. On the Scientech building, the one that we originally showed that had the integrated brick, that's where you lay brick in a form liner and you actually pour the concrete right on top of the brick, stand it all up. Looks like brick, but it's actually embedded into the concrete. So this here.
Is this a good example?
Yeah, that's a great example. I mean, that looks just like wood paneling. That's actually concrete there that we have poured it into a form liner. You can actually use sustained concrete, so you don't have to do anything with it, but we opted to paint it, actually with a vertical stain afterward.
Out of
So,
curiosity, how long does that paint last typically?
15 years is what they suggest that it'll last on that. The beauty of it is that anything you can attach can be de-attached. Anybody that owns residential properties understands that. And this is permanent. I mean, you move a couch into this apartment complex and you run into the wall, you need a new couch. You do that on typical construction, and you got some dents and damages in your paneling. So there's some
I'll just
benefits.
mention too, the other beauty of it is that with its location, I was on the Planning Commission while we did the Shorelands Business Park plan, and we talked about the durability of materials because that air is very saline,
Sure.
high salinity levels, and so it's great to.
Yeah, anytime you can form rock in the image you want, you're better off. And if you can embellish it and make it look like just anything traditional construction, you're miles ahead. And I think most of you probably know that there's some wind in here in Centerville every once in a while. And again, it can't blow that off because it's permanently attached. So it adds to the longevity of the property. It adds to the general look and appeal of it. Actually, our building here, the main benefit, I think it was asked, how long does that last? I mean, you go put new makeup on that 15 years from now, and you wouldn't even be able to tell that it was a used building. It looked brand new. So those are the benefits of embellishing the concrete like this. You get all the benefits of that durability and construction, but you get the look and feel modern technology. So that's kind of why we've opted with that. And that's our general intent for that entire business park. And I think, as I mentioned to the Planning Commission, our intent is to own these long-term, hold on to them as long as we can, which that means to you as a city council and as the mayor that we're going to be around for a long time. You know, we want them to look good. We want to attract good tenants. We want to have a good look and feel of that park, and so that's why we've taken the steps that we have.
What's your timeline for building these? Do you have any tenants already lined up, or you
We got trucks moving in next week, so.
So you'll build them before the tenants come?
Before we're approved, I'm joking. No, we want to get it going as soon as we possibly can.
Yeah, you're already pushing dirt around on that property, right?
Well-
Because I drove by on the freeway, and I wasn't sure if that was your property or the one next to it.
No, we're not. We, when we bought the land from Rick Jensen and his group, they had a big project from, I think it was the airport or something like that, that they had a lot of material that they had to dispose of. So we got a grading permit and actually brought all that material in, but we haven't done anything to the site since then.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Our
Just saw a
intent
lot
is-
of trucks back there. I wasn't sure if that was your site or the one next to it.
Yeah, our intent is to start construction as quickly as we possibly can. We've got a fairly significant inventory of property all over the country, but this is where we want to add new inventory. So we are going to spec some buildings, and we are going to have tenants ahead of that before we start. But our intent is to start as soon as we can get this through the city and get the
I
building permit.
just wanted to answer the question on what's moving around. To the south of them directly are 2 Hogan lots. Moto United has bought that property, and Hogan is removing all of the stuff that they've put on that property in that sale, so that's what's going on
Okay.
there.
It's a little hard to survey at 70 miles an hour,
Yes.
which one was which, so.
Yeah, yeah. Their project would be just north of that.
I did say 70, not 71.
Legacy.
No, not on Legacy,
It's
on
speeding is what he
I-15.
was saying.
Hey, any questions for Mr. Stewart? Great, thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
This matter is scheduled for a public hearing. We'll go ahead and open that. If there was anyone who would like to speak regarding the zone map amendment and conceptual site plan for the Parish Creek Business Park, we'd love to hear from you. Any of you scouts ready to? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing and turn to the council for questions or action.
I just had a comment. You'll notice in the ordinance, we did not have the submittals from the applicant at the time the packet went out. So you'll need to revise condition number 5 in the ordinance. It's highlighted in yellow. It says, and supplemental information required by the Planning Commission and submitted, if you could just say, by the applicant for council consideration on March 21st, 2017. So that's the submittal of the renderings as well as the pictures. I think we'll add the detail that the Planning Commission wanted. And then also if you could revise condition number 1 to just say the property shall be rezoned IHPD and limited to the area designated as parcel 0600300050, eliminating reference to an aerial map, okay, that we don't have.
Well, this one's an easy one for me. I was on the Planning Commission when we did the original approval for this spot, so I'd make a motion to adopt ordinance number 2017-06, amending the Centerville zoning map by changing the zoning of approximately 16.15 acres of property at 1030 North, 950 West from Industrial High to Industrial High Plan Development Overlay, along with conceptual site plan approval for the Parish Creek Business Park PDO with the amendments as Lisa outlined.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it if you can do it all again in one breath. No, I could second that motion. I've been to a lot of business parks over my career, and the campus style tends to be the most visually appealing. It's a great way to integrate warehouse space and actually make it look decent. So I'm in full support of it.
So moved and second. I also just wanted to comment. I appreciate the trying to make the buildings look like there's a theme, and appreciate the upgraded construction. We want these to look good for a very long time, as they'll be very visible. Any other comments before we vote on this?
How significant is the 400 feet versus the normal?
Good question. We have a couple of cul-de-sacs in the city that are beyond that limit. that are longer than that limit now. Randy would probably have an opinion
Yeah.
on that.
Well, yeah, if you talk to Randy, he doesn't like cul-de-sacs, period, because plowing them is always a pain. The significance generally by ordinance is saying the 400 feet, and attached in the same paragraph is no more than 20 dwelling units. And so the subdivision ordinance on the length is oriented more to residential development, but it carries over covering all cul-de-sacs and all zones. So the significant part of a cul-de-sac would be is to make sure you don't have a depth where you do have a problem with emergency. And that was the significant discussion on why the boulevard designed to the road. There'll be 2 lanes of traffic regardless of the number of trips that are being generated. And the case is if there's an incident on the east side, they can stage all the equipment in those 2 lanes and use the other 2 lanes. And so that's the change of where the longer cul-de-sac now becomes as less of concern based on handling the emergency.
So will there actually be
Equipment.
4 lanes?
There'll be the ability to have 4 lanes delivering it. Now, that's good for the trucks also, circulating in the project as well as emergency service, so.
Now, I don't think that meant they'd be striped as 2 lanes in each direction, but
No, it'll be set up so
wide
that
enough
it would function theoretically as 2 lanes.
I thought that the statement was there's a median.
Yes, there's a median also as a part of that.
So it's just,
Then doesn't it have to be 2 separate lanes each direction?
Well, it'll be single lanes each one, but they're built with an asphalt width that if you striped them, they would be 2 lanes.
Or in an emergency, one side shut down, the other one could have 2-way traffic, is what
Yes.
you're saying?
Yes. And the boulevard design is to break up that massing of asphalt. Otherwise, a 747 might try to land there.
Yeah.
Not in 400 feet.
yeah, Sky Park pilots might try it.
All right, we have a motion on the table to adopt ordinance 2016-07 as amended. Any further comments?
Question, Mayor.
Yes.
So the thought just occurred to me, a cul-de-sac is a public road or a private road?
The plan for this cul-de-sac is a publicly dedicated road to get the lot frontages for all the lots to potentially be sold separately.
Okay, but the median landscaping is a responsibility of the, for who to maintain?
That'll be the subdivision and site plan processes.
Okay.
Can we
Just-
make that
Unless
part?
you want to make that decision now.
Well, I
So
think generally,
TBD.
generally, we prefer, especially in an industrial park like that, can we make it part of the overall landscape rather than having a city crew come and do a very small, these are small medians far away from everything
No,
else.
that's a great
So-
point, but it was anticipated that they would be taking care of it. So we'd have to reach those agreements in the approvals.
In the approval yet to come with the planning commission, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You still have your site plan and subdivision processes.
All right, we ready to vote? All those in favor of ordinance 2017-06 as with the amendments?
Mayor, can I move to have that to be a roll call vote, please?
Sure, certainly. Let's have a roll call vote, starting with Tammy.
Aye.
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 That passes 5-0. Thank you very much. We look forward to those improvements. All right, we've got one more to go. This is a PDO zone map amendment and conceptual site plan for Legacy Commons, 1250 West Parish Lane. Corey will be providing us a staff report on this.
Yeah, Mayor, members of the council, and I'm going to try to do the mayor a favor and not say a whole lot. We'll see how far that goes to it. Just by way of procedures and the oddity with this application, the request is for a plan development overlay approval, and that's always associated and hitched at the hip with the conceptual site plan. Again, it becomes, if you will, the custom zone. So any variations from standards are called out into that area. The rest of the regulations that are not called out remain in effect, but it becomes the parcel's custom approval. The developer approached the city and submitted an application for that PDO zone. We had some discussions with them preliminarily about the application. There are elements that are not complete in the application, be up front. Usually the conceptual site plan has a much more detail and understanding service infrastructure and so forth about the project. The concern that the applicant raised is they were worried about putting that kind of engineering in and potentially not achieving an approval of a PDO. So you do have this belly of the whale, rock in the hard spot kind of situation here, what should be done. The way it was approached by staff is we can carry through to the Planning Commission and City Council conceptually what you like to do, and then provide you the opportunity to have a discussion with the council on the possibilities of visioning this property. Part of the driver of that is that they do not own all of the property. Part of the property on the western edge is owned by UDOT, which they have, from my understanding, an offer and a contract through. But they are concerned from their standpoint, hopefully I'm not stepping on toes, let them discuss that. They're concerned that the purchase and taking that property and filling it all with commercial is not, in their view, a marketability. So using the West Centerville Neighborhood Plan, this would be one of the last spots. The other space would be the Rogers Marine. That's the last area under the CVH zoning that allows a mixed sector use. And they would like to capitalize on that opportunity for a mixed sector use. The question is will the city entertain that before they purchase the UDOT property? And so they wanted to go through some type of process, and I said, well, we can take it through, but really can't get the council to approve it into this condition. So the purpose of the application is to allow you to have some dialogue and not consider an approval at this point, but give them directives of whether master planning this site in a mixed sector use should be considered, or whether, since it's a legislative decision, you don't think it's in the best interest of the city and just resort to, they need to look at commercial very high, and whether they use their property and UDOT's, or whether they withdraw their offer from UDOT, let them to make that private decision about it. We took it to the Planning Commission. I'm not going to go through all of that presentation. Staff was supportive of visioning of this project. I think there's some changes and conditions. If you want to explore that, I'd be happy to have some discussion with you about visioning on the property, but I'll sit back and let the applicant have their approach to you as they would like. If you want to talk about visioning, we could do that. But the idea is that if you're not interested in using the West Centerville Neighborhood Plan mixed sector allowances, you just simply turn it down. It's not complete. It's not a direction you want to go. It's a legislative decision, and you don't want to entertain that idea. If you would consider it, not promising that you approve it yet. I certainly wouldn't recommend it because I see some changes here, but I haven't had a chance to hammer that out with the developer. But I certainly could spend a little bit of time talking about that tonight if you'd like. But we think as a whole that this does complete a puzzle. The remaining, if you will, puzzle would be just the Rogers Marine. Anything else has to be CVH zone to use that mixed sector use. And so you would have to change the general plan to expand the CVH area before they could use the mixed sector use. So this would be the third puzzle piece, and probably most likely the final puzzle piece of what was started at the Megaplex. But from there, let the applicant have their time with you, answer some questions. If you want to talk about some visioning, and allow me the opportunity to arm wrestle the developer in a public forum a little bit about visioning, I'd be happy to do that, but I'll spare you that time right now.
Any questions for Corey before we ask Mr. Wright if he would like to speak?
Sure. I've got a question for you, Corey. I understand the intent, but since this isn't a complete application, how do we end up at a public hearing portion? That's the piece I'm missing.
That might have been my mistake. Did I misunderstand and show it as a public hearing when I shouldn't have?
Well, I think you can notice it and just say the public hearing is more due when you complete the application. If you're going to go, I'll let Lisa answer
Well,
that.
it's noticed as a public hearing because it is coming to the city council, so if you actually want to deny it, you're going to have to come up, you're going to have the public hearing and come up with your own findings to deny it. But I think you could deny it just on the basis that it's incomplete.
So based on the fact that it's not a complete application, I guess for me it's procedural where the public would be commenting on something that's not complete. There's no legislative decision that can be made. I'm just confused how we got to this point. Because the discussion is good to have. We should have the discussion, but where we're missing those elements, is it appropriate to discuss it when it's in that form?
That's the tricky question, and staff felt like we'll just follow our procedures but not make recommendations for approval and allow them to measure the temperature. One of the things that you struggle with is one of the mistakes of the old village center plan on the 50 acres where Walmart and the Florentine towns and stuff is that everybody had a great plan, but nobody measured the temperature of the community to it. And I'm stuck in this position where I think we could get to something that's a good PDO, but the developer wants to measure the temperature. And you could simply just say, I don't want to give you the temperature. And then they go back and decide that for themselves, and we can carry it through the process.
Well, that's where I'm going. Irrespective of this concept, I'm just saying in general, if we do a measure of the temperature activity, if we open the door for every developer to bring us a measure of the temperature activity, and I don't know if that's turning us into a pseudo planning commission by doing that. That's my concern.
The issue is you're talking about a PDO. We wouldn't bump up and say, hey, do you like this site plan before we approve it? Because that's an administrative act. This is a legislative act. It has elements of administrative because you're implementing certain tools, but it is still a legislative act. And I'll just be honest with you, the developer didn't want to spend the time and money if they were going to spend $50,000 on drawings, and the answer is there's no way we would consider any more PDO development. So I agree with you, it's an awkward situation, but at the same time, a PDO is always an awkward situation. It's not an administrative right, and so I think measuring the temperature in that case, this still has some relevancy.
I think as long as we understand the committee, you're asking either reject it or remand it back to the planning commission to be complete.
To say, you don't have to say, yes, we're going to approve it. Just say the entertainment of a mixed sector use, we want the planning commission to go spend that time, hash it out, and come to us and see if that project meets our expectations. Or it's, no, this is nowhere near something we want to do in Centerville.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, I'll ask Mr. Wright if he would like to address the council on this matter before we open it for a public hearing.
Lisa dearly wants to say something. I can see her making the motion for the mic.
Well, I was just going to say another alternative is for the council to just say we don't have enough information. I mean, I can see that point as well. We don't have enough information to give any feedback, so you're welcome to do that as well.
Yeah, and the intent is not to shut down discussion. I just want to make sure that procedurally we're handling this correctly.
I think your questions are very appropriate, George. Mr. Wright.
Thanks very much for your time. Spencer Wright, 1178 West, Legacy Crossing Boulevard, Suite 100. Our intent tonight was not to put anyone in an awkward situation. We simply, as Mr. Snyder has explained, wanted to talk to the city to see if this is something that they would consider. Approximately a year and a half ago, the Savage companies approached us and asked if we would be interested in purchasing approximately 6 acres here on the eastern half of this property. And we said we thought that would be a great idea, and so we worked with them to purchase that property. And as we talked and thought about what is the best use of this property, and talk to tenants and other people, the commercial use is definitely a great component here, but we realized that the commercial use needed to be up on Parish Lane. And so as we looked at the property and we saw that UDOT owned the western two acres and the frontage on Parish Lane, we thought, you know what, we need to talk to UDOT and we need to see if we can make this work. And we've heard about the horrors of dealing with UDOT tonight, and luckily that there's an individual named Daryl Davis who works with their surplus property, and he has been great to work with. So if you live long enough, you see things that you don't think you'll ever see. But he has been great to work with, and we are under contract to purchase that property. And we are really excited about this because we think this can be a great mixed-use property. If we purchase the UDOT property, the commercial can move up onto Parish Lane, and there are tenants there who are interested, and frankly, I got a call today. We get a call about once a week. We just have a sign up on the property for tenants who want to be up on Parish Lane where the traffic is. And so then our question was, okay, is if we move all the commercial up onto Parish Lane, what do we do with the back? And frankly, as commercial developers, we've developed a number of commercial buildings here in the city. We don't think there's enough commercial demand to develop the entire 8 acres in a commercial zone. And so that's why we're here tonight. We wanted to get the council's temperature about this potential mixed-use project. And obviously, we don't have a problem spending the money to hire the architects and to hire the engineers to put together a plan that the staff is okay with and that you're okay with. But we didn't want to do that if you know right off the bat that this is not something you want to see on this corner. So that was our intent. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that you may have, and I can get into details as much as you would like on the project.
I have a question for Mr. Wright. You said commercial is viable on Paris Lane, but maybe not viable in other areas, commercial retail type uses. But why not industrial? You're surrounded by industrial there, industrial commercial type uses. Why not those type of uses?
So I don't think there's any reason why industrial couldn't be done there. I just don't think that it's the highest and best use for the property. I think it can be developed into a higher and better use than industrial. But obviously, if you wanted to continue the industrial, I think that could be done. Again, I think that that's not the highest and best use, though, for the property.
Other questions for Mr. Wright? None?
Where are your egress points on? I don't see any egress points on these sketches.
Let's see. So we have 2 on 1250. We do not have any on Parish Lane, and that's something that we have talked to staff about. When we talked to UDOT initially about purchasing the property from them, we asked if that was a possibility to have a curb cut onto Parish, and they said no, that was not a possibility. But we have talked with the staff, and I know the staff is very anxious to get involved and to help us try to get curb cuts on Parish Lane. They would have to be most likely right in, right out access points, because there is a median, at least part of the way there on Parish Lane. But look, as commercial developers, the more access, the better. We love access because tenants want access. The more access they have, the more customers can get into their business, and the better, more successful they will be. So we would love to have more access. We just have not shown that on Parish Lane because we don't know yet if that's possible.
Having talked to some of our staff, I actually spent several hours on your plan.
Thank you.
I'm not sure that we would be, or that I would be okay if we couldn't get the access off of Parish Lane. I would like to see UDOT work with you to get the access off of Parish Lane, and I think that might be one of the problems you're going to need to overcome to be able to.
Can I ask a question about that? Is that in relation to that? Help me understand why that would be a required condition.
I think it would put way too much traffic out on 1250 for the rest of the plans that we have for 1250.
Okay.
I'll just lead off. I would, like the mayor, I would rather see more industrial. That's way more residential units than I would probably feel comfortable with. Not that I wouldn't be comfortable with some, but not anywhere near what we have. Let's see. And the other thing that I think you need to be aware of is we definitely think that we would, and I don't know what the right wording is, but I would want to put in anything that we agreed upon that the commercial, or at least a big part of the commercial, had to be finished before you did the residential. So I know the residential is viable. So I don't want, to say, well, we couldn't get, none of the rest of it went through, we're just going to build the residential. So that would be another concern of mine. So I'm just giving you my concerns.
Thank you.
And I speak only for myself.
Sure.
Well, you speak well, though. Like Robin, I'm very uncomfortable with the amount of residential in this plan. And the ingress, egress points are definitely a sticking point for me as well. That's a lot of people and cars to be going in and out of just 2 spots, and that is a difficult street already. It really adds to the burden on that.
On the north side?
Yes, on the north side.
Difficult.
I don't know that I think it's so much difficult on the north side as it is getting in and out of Parish Lane onto 1250.
Onto
That's
1250,
the
right.
real issue.
It's
That's the
it's
issue
the
today.
Intersection right there. You have to get back to Parish, and trying to have that kind of traffic flow. That when I look at those parking spaces and I imagine those having several cars, that makes me a little concerned with only 2 points.
But it's now light controlled, so I
Right.
guess I don't understand.
Well, I think it's going to back up.
Concern.
If you start getting people coming out of this one closest to Parish on the south, I think you're going to back up past the egress, and it's going to cause additional trouble there, where we've got city trucks and things that are already.
I would suggest that we have a similar situation already tried and tested across the street on the south side.
What you're seeing on Parish, I drive it every single day, a couple times with work, is people do not obey the speed limits on Parish. So depending on where your egress is onto Parish, you've got a problem of trying to out-accelerate the people who are coming down the hill.
Right.
The light it isn't quite marketplace yet as far as our number of T-bone accidents, but I can see that coming because we do have a speed problem going down that hill. Now, I myself have been flagged by the police on that. We need to look at the enforcement on that a little bit better because that is going to be a problem for anyone trying to get out onto Parish.
Corey, could you give us a little bit of staff's concerns about?
About the traffic?
About not having an access off of Parish?
Well, my view is balancing also Randy and Kevin's view. That 500, is it 500 north there? They have a concern for twofold. Lining up intersections is typical to handle the full turn movement issues. The other issue that they're raised is the close proximity of the one access to the light there. And of course, the developer is going to struggle because the further away the access aligns on 1250, the less likely the commercial is going to be viable there, which I think is relevant to that. So, my view is that we as staff know that 1250 West is eventually planned to go into Farmington. Now, in all reality, that's a few years at least down the road. But that still doesn't eliminate the users and circulating to this area. So if we change the accesses so we can get the stacking length onto the light on 1250, move that to at least a full turn movement at the 500 north, we allow somebody coming on or off, not off Legacy, coming down the Parish lane, that they can come across and through the intersection and not tie up all the right-hand turns and try to make a left-hand turn in all that turning traffic. They can come across through the intersection, hit a nice entrance on Parish with a right in, right out, do what they need to do or stay what they need to stay, and come back out on 1250 and stack with a sufficient length on 1250. So I think it's the advantage of arguing that. Now, I'm also looking from trying to put myself in UDOT's shoes, and I disagree with UDOT putting no access restriction here. First, we have one right across the street to begin with, and it's going to be a right in and right out. Second of all, UDOT has a significant piece, awkward shaped, granted, but a significant piece that ought to be sold at somewhat of a premium value. We can argue what that premium value should be. But the state of Utah, they should sell that access right away. If it's not integrated in master plan, then it's isolated, and it's either never sold, which I think is a short change to the citizens as a whole, or they'll have to put in an access anyway. And closer to the ramp is even worse off. And so I think master planning this site is of value. We can discuss the parameters of it, but I think an integral component is if we're going to do this type of development, master plan, whatever level of intensity here, that right circulation, I mean the correct version, should be established in that master planning effort. If it can't be, then I think we're compromising.
Well,
I'm hoping I can sell, if you go this direction, I'm hoping I can sell UDOT to be smart.
I think the problem is we could easily, again, I'm the procedural guy, I think we could easily dip into making legislative decisions or working against a concept plan that's not complete. I would motion that we remand this back to the council, or back to the planning commission, remove this discussion from the council at this point, and get a full concept plan and get more details, because we simply don't have enough details at this point. There's adequacy of services, everything that goes along with regular zoning code that I think the planning commission would have to consider.
So this is scheduled for a public hearing, and I'd ask, could you hold your motion until after we hold a public hearing on this?
Okay.
That's
I'm fine holding the public hearing, I guess. I just, that when I mentioned in the beginning, it was kind of awkward because it's not a legislative decision yet.
So with that, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing since it was noticed for one. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the issue before us, to consider a zone map amendment with the complications that have been discussed and a PDO overlay on this piece of property? Any brave soul who wants to weigh in? No, this is not the time for staff. Seeing none, I'll close it and I'll turn it back to you.
So let me remake that motion. I remand this action back to the Planning Commission for further consideration of a full conceptual site plan as required by, and I don't remember the referencing code, but there is a reference to, so that it's a full application so that this council can have adequate details to make a legislative decision.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded that you remand this back to the Planning Commission, and my interpretation is you provided absolutely no guidance.
I'll make a couple of comments. First of all, I'd like to say that the thing that's exciting to me about this idea is that it's infill development. And infill development is the most fiscally responsible thing that a community can do, because the existing infrastructure needed is there, and we have a potentially huge tax base here that helps our financial situation as a city without having to build new roads and have a new level of roads maintenance. And so for that reason alone, the idea of something like this is exciting to me, since we are a very penny pinching city and work on a very tight budget. I also like the idea of creating a certain level of synergy with some of the existing uses that we've already allowed. And I also absolutely agree with what Spencer Wright has said about highest and best use. So tied along with the idea of the value, the financial value of infill development, the more you can move towards that highest and best use level in infill development, the more financially rewarding that it is. And I know that we all sometimes hesitate about the conversation about multifamily housing, but I've heard many residents on the east side say that their concern is more in their east side neighborhoods and not so much on the west side.
Bill, I think, were you about to make a comment?
I was actually going to say kind of what you said, and that is my perception of what they were looking for is this worth the effort in going forward?
Should I spend the money or not?
And we, at this point, if we just send it back to the Planning Commission, we haven't said anything. I've got some thoughts. I mean, I think some others do. I guess.
And I could interpret it, now that I probably spoke too soon, as if I look at what was said, you could interpret it two ways, or you could reject it which would clearly send the message, we're not interested in a mixed-use development. You can remand it back, and one could interpret that as, yes, I'm interested in it, but it's not complete. And I want to be careful that the council doesn't send a message different than what you intend to send.
Well, I think there's two messages that are on the table. What I've heard from Robin and I've heard from Stephanie is density concerns. And I think from a developer perspective, that might go into the plan. And then we've had strong advocacy for, I think, the plan as it is from Tammy.
Not exactly. I was in a very general concept of the mixed use and the moving towards highest and best use, and the synergy and the similarity between what's across the street. Since we've already allowed that, why not make kind of a four corners feel there?
I would say, just from my perspective and what I've heard from residents on the east side and those who are not saying just not in my backyard, I think the overall concern in the community is what is the loading as the full community, not necessarily did it get built in my backyard or not. I think as any town, and this is why I said we need to remand it back, is because there's an evaluation of adequacy of services. You know, all the emergency services and elsewise. Does this represent any additional burden to the police department? I have no idea. Though that's the kind of information I'd like to have when this is sent back to the Planning Commission. I'd like to know the adequacy of services and everything else surrounding it. And I don't mention the police as if that's the sticking point. I'm just saying, for example, that would be one of the services that would need to be evaluated.
And it is scary, just like you said, I don't want to send the wrong message one way or another. And
Yeah, I
it's
think,
kind of an awkward situation, because I don't want to say to you, well, if you do this, this, and this, I have no idea whether we'd be able to approve it or not. And so I can tell you some of the complaints I have, but I'm not saying yes.
I think it's fair to ask, are you willing to consider a residential mixed-use project, or say, no, I'm not willing to consider a mixed use with residential and some other use?
Well, I think it would provide balance to the area. I mean, if you had symmetrical residential on either side, I mean, there's some value to that. As to what that density level is, I don't know. I have no idea on how I would be looking at that, and a lot of that is really based on what the final plan looks like. The actual application, I could better say. I think it's really as far as I could go on that.
I can say that I'm not comfortable with that much. And that's an adamant. I'm absolutely, I mean, if it came like that, I would say no. I'm not comfortable with that much residential. So I feel like we're burdened to some degree with a lot of density in one area, and while it looks nice now, we don't know yet what it will look like in 25 years, and I don't want to make a huge pool of something that's that much of an unknown and that much of a burden on the various infrastructure and services that we have, as well as the community feel.
Any other comments? We have a motion on the table to remand this back to the Planning Commission.
Give me 1 second.
Is it
I
possible
second.
for me to ask a question?
Absolutely.
I think this would be a great
Okay.
time. I would welcome it, and given your investment,
you.
I think
I appreciate it.
you should try to get as much out of it as you can.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So I've heard adequacy of services. Help me understand. So assuming that this were, can we just make that hypothetical assumption, this were the final plan that we were presenting today, what kind of services are you concerned about, so I can understand?
So
kind of what-
it states in code that as far as the zoning, there's an evaluation of adequacy of services. I cannot quote you the exact chapter and verse. And like all zoning code, it's very dry. So I've lost the reference. But one of the duties, as far as I understand, and our planning department can tell me if I'm different, if that's different, part of the actual application is that all of that is evaluated by staff before it comes up for legislative decision. Is that correct, Corey? So when I said that, that's just one of the checklist items that would be part of the
Sure.
packet that we would get.
Sure.
So, building on that comment, in a recent situation, there was substantial distress and disagreement with traffic studies and what was provided and what local residents believe that feeds into that.
Okay.
And so one of my concerns, while I personally love the hotel thought, I am concerned about 7:30 until 9 o'clock in the morning feeding onto Parish Lane. How many beds is it?
100.
You know, all of a sudden you're now talking another significant amount of traffic. And I'm not saying no, because I love the hotel thought. I'm just saying that's the kind of concern George is talking about.
Okay. So we're very familiar with traffic studies and hiring traffic engineers to perform studies for projects. I guess the question is if a traffic study thought that this use would work, you know, if the traffic study came back and said, yeah, the traffic will function properly, you know, they not only do they look at the traffic now, but they look at it 10 years, 20 years down the road, and they assign a score, a grade, if you will, to how the traffic will function. And obviously, you know, if some of those scores come back as D's and F's, then that means it's not going to work in the future. But if a traffic engineer were to say, yeah, this will still work, it's designed properly, the amount of trips that will be generated by these uses is not something that's going to overwhelm the system. If we had that in front of you, how would that change your view or impact your view?
You misinterpreted. I don't have a view. That's the concern.
Okay.
That's the concern.
And this is where this is why I started out with them in an awkward position as a legislator, and this is why I moved this direction, is because without all that data, and I'm using our planning commission and our planning department as the gate on that, if it fits through all of the criteria that's laid out, then it becomes the legislative decision I'm comfortable making. As it sits right now, I think it's been fairly clear. I guess I sound like the fence sitter. I'm not a fence sitter on this one. Let me just say that I think that the development has possibilities. I think the concern is the density of residential. I love the concept of having that property not be fallow and actually be used for something other than growing weeds. But I think that the density is going to be an issue. At least that's where it stands today.
Okay, so the density, there's 120 units is what's proposed here. It meets the density that's allowed under a PDO, which obviously is a legislative decision. I don't know how many units are across the street in the other two projects. Does anyone?
The Legacy Crossing is at 206 units and is at its max amount. Okay. The Legacy Trails is not at its max amount. It's 162. They do have, under those parameters, it would have room. They chose not to maximize all of that room. And so you have a mixture of that use.
Okay. Thank
But
you.
that's not to your advantage because we already have that many in that area. And that's what Stephanie is saying is, how many do we want in one area?
Sure, and I understand that, and that's a reasonable question, reasonable concern. I think we believe that there's a synergy there, that it makes sense for this property to be developed, to have additional units there, that they will help support and feed the commercial that's proposed there, that we would all like to see there, the tax base. So the problem with the west side of the city, west of I-15, is that there are not enough housetops to support a lot of commercial business. And so this is a true mixed-use project that will help, well, the commercial helps the residential and the residential helps the commercial. So I understand that there are a lot of units there. We don't feel like we're proposing to add a tremendous amount more of units, and we feel like that it would be a good synergy and it is a good use for the property.
I'm not sure how I see much synergy between the apartments and the hotel. I see a lot of synergy between the last project that we just approved in the hotel.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of synergy between the ability to attract a restaurant to the area. We've struggled to attract a restaurant to the movie complex area. And the question is would a few more approved apartments help tip the scale, and a hotel, because hotels are obviously big users of restaurants. Would that tip the scale so that you get two or three you get a couple of restaurants, because getting one is a challenge. Usually they come in twos and threes, or they want to cluster around each other. And so would this tip the scale or not? The zoning principles would say put your similar stuff together. Don't put one high-density apartment here and one far away. Put them all in one place and try to feed off them. Would this much more make a difference?
And if it does make a difference, will it be positive or negative?
Well, I think those around would say it would be positive for the commercial uses. Would it be?
I don't know that it would be enough to make the difference. You've got your theater down there, and you've got an awful lot of apartments already down there. So I think that they might be able to make it go. But, I mean, you came and asked us what you're going to need to do, and we can't tell you that because you've put us in a real awkward position. I don't want to say to you, well, if you came in with this amount of residents, and if you did this and if you did that,
Sure.
and then you come and we've learned more information and we go, no, and you're like, hey, I put all this money into it. I'm really uncomfortable with this conversation. For that reason is I don't want to give you any false hope, but I am also saying I'm like Stephanie. If that was the plan today, I would vote no.
Well, and I think the mayor pointed it out, a remand is not a reject. So it's not a rejection. I think that there's some viability behind the concept. I just like to have all the data so that I'm comfortable in the legislative role of having the discussion and talking about it.
But I think at this point, he's getting a feeling for what the feelings are, and now he's I don't know if he's gotten what he wanted, but I think he's gotten what he asked for.
Clear as mud, right?
So I did have one other question.
Sure.
Robin asked the question, expressing concern, well, we got the residential built, but we weren't able to attract a hotel. So do we have the ability to put any kind of a condition on that the whole hotel has to be in and up?
Well, we do
before
have
the-
control over phasing during the site plan and perhaps part of the PDO. We did do some phasing requirements for the legacy trails where we said we wanted that corner spot to go in first. So yes, there's a little bit of flexibility and authority to approve a phasing plan that had more commercial.
I wasn't included at that point in time because I'm new, or which corner spot had to go in first?
The Maverick.
For instance, the Maverick
Okay.
went in
I
first,
thought
and I
maybe that's
think
what you were referring to, but I
even
didn't
with
know.
Legacy Crossing, the theater had to go in first. So we required the theater and all public improvements for the theater. Each phase has to stand on its own with public improvements, but also requiring certain anchor tenants to go in first, meaning the commercial.
And the phasing that was proposed in the concept, I had no problem with. It had the hotel as the first phase.
Yeah. And I think the developer has represented that they intend to do the commercial first anyway. If you look at their phasing plan, that's what they're proposing.
All right, I missed
Well,
that.
you have the phase one is the hotel, phase two is the residential, and then phase three would be the restaurant,
Oh,
if I see that correctly. And I get the feeling that the desire is to have some more restaurants to make that a viable commercial area over there.
More commercial, less residential, and commercial definitely first.
But
It's easy.
I think many of us understand, especially those of us who were here before and had to make the very hard decision. If we said no to residential, we did not get the movie theater. And so the residential was a requirement to get the movie theater. And that was a very tough decision for our community. Many people said, no, it's not worth it. Some of us said, okay, I'll do it. And you've got maybe some of the same question here eventually, once this is complete. Is the commercial worth taking this with you, or do you say no?
The argument of that you need critical mass in residential to create good commercial use, I think that's a viable argument. I don't think that's really necessarily in dispute. I think the the mixture in terms of what the percentages are may be of question amongst the council. But I don't think that there's anyone, at least from what I'm hearing, even though this is a remand, I don't hear a lot of resounding no's to the project concept. So I'd like to call a question on the remand.
Right, I'd second.
Sorry, can I ask another question? Okay. With regards to the, I guess let me state first, with regards to the commercial use, we are incentivized absolutely to put the commercial in as quickly as we can. We have no reason to delay that. As soon as we could get tenants, we would love to get the commercial in. And then one quick question. For those of you that feel like the 120 units is too much density, is there a density that you would feel more comfortable with? Do you feel like it's single family is what you're comfortable with, or would you be okay with kind of a medium density project?
Now you're asking us to make a decision that we can't make. I know what you're asking, but I'm saying from a legislative perspective and from where we sit, answering that question, if Lisa didn't pounce on us first, that's just a question we really can't answer.
Okay, all right.
They wouldn't.
You
they
would pounce
wouldn't
on
do
us,
very
wouldn't
well
you?
in those
Okay.
Supreme Court nomination interviews if they answered that question. So let's go ahead and call the question. So the motion on the table is to remand this back to the Planning Commission just to remand it back to the Planning Commission for further study and for a complete application. So roll call vote. Tammy?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Appreciate it.
We hope you really meant that.
And Mr. Wright, we appreciate Wright Development's commitment to quality that you bring to the west side. You built a beautiful building, you spent a lot of money on it, and Wright Development is associated with quality projects, and we appreciate that. Rather than go to number 5, we have a number of folks here, I think, who are interested in number 6, direction to staff regarding cemetery analysis. And I think there's only one person who would be sad if we delayed the municipal code a few minutes.
She's gonna cry.
So,
As long as it's not tabled, she won't cry.
so let's take a direction to staff regarding cemetery analysis. Steve, I'm not sure if you or Bruce want to
I'd like to
tee it
lead
up.
I'd like to lead out
Thank
on
you.
this one. I think you've heard me say before that the numbers don't pencil out regarding, in my opinion, regarding the options that have been reviewed so far. So we're not recommending as staff that you proceed with any of those. If you
And
want,
which are those?
those that were presented in the work session by our city engineer.
Okay, so strictly the wall.
Our 11,000 worth of engineering is all
Yeah.
recommended not to do.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. And if you wish to study other options, I would respectfully request that you put that on the back burner for a while, because my staff is really behind the 8 ball on some projects that need to get out to bid in
What does a while mean?
a while, a few months at least.
I mean, after the budget,
Yeah,
or, so you're talking
latter
Mid-
part of this year.
midsummer or fall?
Yeah, but if you want to address the basic question of whether you even want to put some more effort into this, that's fine. You want to make that judgment. And if that judgment is that, yes, you want to put some more effort into this, I'm asking, would you push
Delay
it
it.
back? Because whatever you decide to do, you're not going to create cemetery spaces in time to satisfy the demand
Yeah.
I would
in a
just-
timely manner.
There
what I'm
could be
saying.
some advantages to seeing what's the reaction when you go for a while without availability.
The only thing I would take issue with is that it seems like, as far as concluding that it didn't pencil out, we didn't really follow up on the idea of double depth.
We were told we couldn't do double depth.
No, we were told we could.
Bruce, you're
I thought
listening, I
Bruce
hope.
said we couldn't do double depth on that end.
in that area, my recollection in discussion with staff, with Bruce, was that it wasn't
What was the question?
desirable.
In the proposed expansion area to the west,
Oh, yeah.
is double depth burials, are they viable? And what are the limitations?
So in the area where we haven't buried anyone,
The new expanded
it's
area.
too steep to access, you could do double depths. You can't do double depths in an area where you've already got single depth graves is the.
Okay.
So can you do it right up to the, next to those where you've got?
No, so we
So
need.
how do you?
Yeah, we need a
have
buffer. We need
of-
6 feet, 6-foot buffer, or maybe a 10-foot buffer,
So it might change the total number of spaces, but then double whatever the altered number of spaces.
In other words, you might get 150% of the numbers that you were showing.
Yeah, at
possibly,
least. Sure.
in
Yeah.
terms of numbers of spaces. And
Sure.
Which changes the numbers. And even in the penciling out here, other than Jenny's great point about making sure we're considering liability and future maintenance costs, which I had other creative ideas to address, I just think it's a little bit too simple to say it didn't pencil out at this point even.
My opinion on this, for what it's worth, which is not very much since I don't get a vote, it is that I think the options before us are very difficult. But I think a little bit of further study and on spending a little bit more money on this is warranted. I think Robin's idea of putting the wall close to the edge of where we have the graves now, and then potentially either putting a road down below and filling in the existing road with spaces, or putting the mausoleum down below, might be worth another small amount of engineering study to come up with a cost estimate. It's probably not going to pencil out, but we could consider it.
Well,
The other thing that I think is worth considering long-term that we've said we want to do is look at the cost estimate of a larger space on the hillside on that land that the city owns. I believe that long-term, there's going to be a lot of pressure to put that to some use, the area of the dikes, and having open space, having a park cemetery combination rather than housing or some other use up
Can
there.
you AVT in the, or
ATV.
ATV in the cemetery?
You can't, but, if you look at other communities around us over the course of 50 years, the mountains used to be great for motorbikes, ATV, et cetera, and as the value of land goes up and the pressures of putting another 1 million, 2 million, 3 million people in the Wasatch Front goes up, those ATV uses have to move further away to another location, and other uses will put pressure. And we have the opportunity to consider, as there is pressure on the hillside, especially those that's not too steep, long-term, what is worth considering? Is it worth considering a plan that would make that permanent open space rather than other development or not? So I'm not saying we can afford it. I'm saying I would be willing to allocate some more money in a future budget year to study that and try to get an answer for our community, so we have a long-range plan.
Well, that's my problem with this is I don't remember allocating 11,000 to this.
Well, there was,
amount.
Steve was clear at a couple of spots during this that
that
money
we
was
were
being
incurring,
spent
yes,
on
that we were incurring engineering
I don't think he gave
analysis
you
costs.
numbers.
Right, so I guess I'm just drawing a blank on that amount. So I think that from a concept perspective, the concepts and the study have to be definitely tied to a dollar amount that we can't exceed, because $11,000 per idea is not a good return, especially when we're not in agreement necessarily. Fundamentally, I think the council needs to agree that they want to even proceed on trying to find more cemetery space, rather than playing with the options within the cemetery as it is. Because that's the question I asked initially is, does the city have an obligation once it reaches its maximum capacity to continue to find burial space for residents? I don't think we ever answered that question as a council.
And this council, I think Steve would welcome, and staff would welcome somebody making a motion to say no, to answer that question for this council. It will certainly come up in a future council, because it's one of the fundamental challenges of local government, but you could answer that and put it to rest now.
Yeah, that is the simple black and white question, but George, you really just made fantastic points about our previous item, that it's very hard to make a decision without the data, without the specific information. And I think that an investment of some thousands of dollars to get really important information about how financially feasible is it for us to answer the question of do we want to move forward is really essential. This question's been thrown out into the air by I don't know how many councils in the past. We should do something about the lack of Centerville cemetery space. We should really do something about that. And I was really proud of us as a council that we were finally actually tackling it. So I personally really want to move forward in the information gathering so that we can say we did due diligence so that we could make an informed decision on this important question. And then the other point that I'd like to make is that I totally agree with Mayor Cutler about asking all the questions about the long-term solution. But what I liked about exploring this West Side idea thoroughly before we dismiss it, and all the different looks it might have, and whether double deck and so it becomes more financially viable, and what can we do about the future maintenance and liability costs, which I don't think we've gotten quite there yet, is that it was that temporary solution for those residents who have the need right now, and we're having to say no. And so if it's doable, and if the numbers can crunch out, then we do that, and then we continue to explore the other options. I don't want to make the question so big and take so long that we just really never take action on it.
Well, that's why I'm coming back to the fundamental realities are Centerville runs out of space at some point. We can continue to ask ourselves the question, well, how much more can we stretch out of a cemetery? Where else can we put one? But you still come to the conclusion at some point you run out of space. So if you create 400 more burial spots, you've serviced 400 more residents, but you can't service them all. And I think that's why I say from a fundamental perspective, you're signaling that you want to continue. That's fine. I think from a council perspective, we need to answer that question. At what point does the council not spend money because we have reached the practical limits of what you can do with the land we have? And we may not be at that point, but I'm just signaling at some point it will have to stop because there's just no land.
I guess my view of the question is that we have a responsibility to make the best use of the cemetery we have. That is one thing. Now, Steve, I knew we were spending time and effort. Is the $11,000 outside contractors?
Yes,
or is it?
We pay our city engineer is under contract with us, and a good chunk of the cost was doing a survey to get reliable elevation information in order to consider the various options. And it wasn't just one option considered.
No, there were. Yeah,
it
no,
ended up being a number of options, and it's been charged to Bruce's budget initially, but it's been my intent.
Boy, you're in trouble, Bruce.
But it's been my intent that we will transfer contingency at some point from the council's contingency budget to cover that cost. And I think I'm quite sure along the way I did say, this is incurring some cost, and I did say we need to do a survey. Kevin's going to do a survey in order to have reliable data.
So
if you don't have reliable data, your cost estimates are more unreliable. We know that from experience as well.
I had understood that most of the cost was internal staff as opposed to a contract engineer.
No, that $11,000 was engineering costs.
So is that Kevin or is that
Kevin?
somebody?
That's ESI.
And that's ESI to go out and do a survey and Kevin's time.
Yeah, and and he has a structural engineer on staff who had to evaluate the retaining wall issues and so forth.
But in my mind, that's just really within the normal and acceptable range of a study and getting information that's needed to be able to move forward.
Well, yeah, I don't disagree with that. I did not understand that, so shame on me. I still feel like we have to answer the question George has posed. Do we have some kind of responsibility to do something? I've spent a lot of time since we got that first letter from Scott Russin having conversations with a number of people. and asking a number of questions just to kind of get my own feeling and to try to figure out what I believe. Beyond that,
Have you come to a conclusion?
no, I haven't. I really haven't. But beyond that, I think we do have a responsibility to make the best use of the current property, and I tended to side with Steve's original conclusion that the wall and build-up probably doesn't make sense, but there was the item that Robin said, hey, what about? And then also we have the, what are those mausoleums?
The east side.
Columbariums.
Columbariums and the
think was
conversation about up along 7th East, all of which I think ought to be done. I guess ought to be looked at, not done, looked at, so that we can do the best for the residents that we can. And if that is, and then the other thing is what you've taken on the study of, finding out, can we get any of those old spaces that have been sold back? I don't know how that process is going.
It's not
It's not going.
generating any results yet. We had one call, and then they decided against it, and,
So we did a lousy job marketing that.
Not a very good sales pitch then.
yeah.
That's tied to some of my other ideas about dealing with ongoing costs, by the way.
Anyway, I guess I would make a proposal, and that would be that we table this until the second meeting in July, and then we try and figure out how to go forward. At some point in time, I would like to see and I don't know, Lisa, if this is a valid public hearing, do the citizens of Centerville want us to continue to have a cemetery which is viable for the next 25 years? If they do, then we have some marching orders. If they don't, then we have a different set of marching orders.
One way to help answer that is you can put it off till after the election and make it an election issue.
No, let's not have one-issue elections.
Well, Steve, now that we have good elevation
Chicago,
data,
the dead people vote, so.
Yeah.
since we now, ESI has good elevation data, my assumption would be is that if we want to evaluate Robin's proposal, we're talking structural engineering time. When we get to the point of evaluating whatever the new ideas are, can we get ESI to give us a bid on what their estimated costs will be before we proceed on any more of these options?
Yeah, we could ask them to take that approach if you'd like, but I would suggest that when you get to this point of discussing ideas again, let's bring Bruce and Kevin and Randy into the conversation so that we can have some give and take about those ideas and which ones are most feasible, or based on what we've already done in our studies, which ones have the best chance of proving viable before we actually engage in more rigorous engineering.
I agree with that. Is July giving you enough time, or is that too close to budget?
Well, no, it gets us past the budget, so that's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say, because of my particular vantage point, I would urge that we not actively spend money investigating the hillside as an option, because I have watched a hearse slide down the street at our cemetery and then have people have to hike all the way across with that casket because the hearse was not able to get up the slope of our center road. So trying to maneuver up into the hillside, even if we grade it really well, still comes with a lot of liability issues, I think.
You've created a market for a four-wheel drive hearse.
Probably.
Or you make it a public-private partnership, so it's somebody else's liability.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
I would second Bill's.
So Bill, is that a
Bill's
motion?
Yes, that's a
did.
So Bill has made a motion to table this to the second meeting in July. Stephanie has seconded that motion. Further comments?
I do want to thank staff for the research that was put in. It was helpful for me to realize the extent of the impact on the neighbors to the west. I had not realized how much of a burden that would be to them. So it was helpful for me to see that, and I don't think that that's
And I want to thank
that
the neighbors
I don't
that
want the
came in.
neighbors to feel like they are threatened, because I don't want to do that to one of our citizens. I understand the need for a place to bury your loved ones, but the need for being able to have a quality of life while you're alive is also a viable option. Then I want to make sure that we respect that.
And thank you very much for your input and being willing to work with us, because you did give us some really good information that we didn't have to pay for.
Thank you for that.
So we have a motion on to table this issue and further discussion on the cemetery option until the second meeting in July. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. We'll put that on the back burner for a little while, Bruce. Thank you for your efforts.
Mayor, could we have a break?
I think Lisa we could put her off for a few more minutes. Let's take a break and come back and tackle the rest of our agenda.